Well, Zacchaeus was now see, can you imagine? So some of you are so young, you're like, what just happened? What just happened? Can you imagine that for the rest of history, that's how you're known? That's how people remember you. Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was ignored, even hated by the people in his community. But on this particular day, he was invited to the table by the creator of the universe, and it would change everything. God deserves the worship of every living thing on the planet. And everyone needs an invitation to Jesus. This is the mission of God. Those two things to be accomplished. Those two things to happen. That's the mission of God. And so our goal, what we are leaning into, is that we would understand what your role, that you would understand what your role is in seeing these two things happen. I believe that God has strategically placed you where you are. To love God, to love people, to accomplish the mission of Jesus, so that people will have regular encounters with someone who will let them know that God is for them and not against them. I believe that God has a plan. I believe a strategic plan, and that's what He's working. And you might be surprised to know what God's strategic plan is. It's actually a strategy of blessing. It's a blessing strategy. Genesis chapter 12, God says to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make you a great nation, and I will" what? "Bless you, and I will make your name great, so that you will be a what? A blessing. And I will," you're falling off a little bit, stay with me. "I will, those who, and him who dishonors you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." God's strategy to reach and restore the world is a strategy of blessing. "I'm going to bless you," He says to Abram, "and through you, I'm going to bless everyone else." You've probably seen the coffee mugs and the t-shirts that say, "Blessed to be a blessing." Who knew it was actually true? I mean, it's so cheesy. I don't know who even makes that. But it's actually biblical. This one happens to be true. I bless you, God says, so that you will bless others. I'm going to bless the world. I'm going to reach and restore the world. And the strategy that I'm going to use is by blessing you. How incredible is that? We want to talk about the generosity of God for us. Even the way He chooses to reach us and restore us is by blessing. There's a book that I read years ago by a guy named Dave Ferguson. It's called Discover Your Mission Now. And I actually had an opportunity, Pastor Brad and I did, to sit and have a conversation with him one evening after a conference. It was a very unique opportunity. But in that particular book, he talks about a doctoral thesis where they took two different groups of missionaries and they divided them up and they gave them each a strategy. So they had this group of missionaries were given to take the gospel and just share the gospel and try to convert people simply by sharing the gospel. And then they took the other half of the missionaries and they gave them the strategy of sharing the gospel and at the same time blessing people in some way. And so as they did this study and watch what happens, you might imagine the results came back were pretty shocking. The team that just went and delivered the gospel and invited people reached 2 people, and the team that went and blessed people and shared the gospel reached 100 people. It's a pretty stark difference. The point just simply being, God is using a blessing strategy. That's why He says, love me with everything you have and love your neighbor as yourself. So the question gets asked, and we ask it too, who is my neighbor? And the answer that Jesus gives us through the story of the Good Samaritan we've looked at is anyone who comes across your path, that's your neighbor. Love people, a blessing strategy. Everyone worshiping God, and everyone needs an invitation to Jesus. So that's kind of a summary of what we've been talking about over the last few weeks. We got a chance last night just to see this happening just in a small footprint right here on our campus. Mike and Diane Morgan right here. Wave at the nice people. All right. Mike showed up last night with one of those suits that, how do you explain that suit? I don't know. It was a Christmas suit. It had built-in flashing lights, and it was red, and it was... Anyway, I was embarrassed for him. He was wearing it. But lots of volunteers that work with our ministry called Ridgeware just yesterday afternoon here in our lobby just simply invited people to come, and they put out, they had a little cookie making station for kids and hot chocolate, and then they had all kinds of Christmas clothing and all kinds of Christmas ornaments and decorations. So that people, and Christmas trees, by the way, everyone that wanted an artificial tree was giving a tree. And so it seems like a small thing. And the truth is, they probably would make it through Christmas without these things. But the thing they desperately needed was to feel connected and to belong and to know that someone else knew that they were here. And so it was beautiful just to watch and to see that happen, because these aren't our friends. They're not homeless people. But let me just tell you, we're surrounded by so many people. A $400 emergency would probably push them towards a homeless position. The world is just tough right now. And so we saw and had an opportunity just to love on some people right here in our own building. So how do we become, here's the question I want to ask you, how do we become a people who love other people well? And we have to how do we engage with, we have to engage with others. We have to engage with other people in order for this to work. And it is hard work to engage with other people. But how can we become a people who love others well? So what we've been doing is using the B.L.E.S.S strategy, also found in Dave Ferguson's book that I mentioned earlier. I'd love for you to get it and read it. B.L.E.S.S, and we've started walking through just as kind of an anchor point, and we said begin with the letter B is begin with prayer. So I just want to ask you, how are you doing with this? Because it doesn't work if you just sit and listen and go, that sermon was just okay, and yet you're not praying. I'm just being fair to me. Okay, so begin with prayer. Engage with it. Do it. Begin to pray. God, how would you have me to bless people in the places where you have sent me? We can do this together. Then we said last week, listen. Don't talk as much, just listen to people. Listen to their pain, listen to their struggles. In the place where God sends you, learn to listen. And if we listen, I believe they'll tell us how we can love them. Today, you have come on the right day. Today's sermon is brought to you by the letter E, and it's simply eat. Eat. Amen. And there was much rejoicing. There was much rejoicing. It's a really powerful thing. You can't just check this off the box and go, okay, I eat every day. It's not that quick. What I'm encouraging you to do is to eat with people that maybe you don't normally eat with. But there's something powerful, and I would say sacred, about coming around the table together with other people that does something that nothing else does. Just something powerful, even something as simple as a cup of coffee in your hand with someone else. It just helps to build relationships. It takes effort, but it's super powerful. Just tears down walls and build relationships. Let's be honest. We have some obstacles that we have to overcome if we can deploy this particular kind of work. And that obstacle is simply we are self-centered people. We just are. We are. Everything we do, if we're not keeping it in check, is all about Me, my priorities, what I'd like to see. I know you don't believe this, but some people pick churches based on how well the programming is going at the current moment. How do I like this or how do I like that? We are really good at consuming Christian goods and services. And that kind of self-serving approach to following Jesus, if it is that, leads us to indifference to other people. Are you following that line of thinking? And so if I let myself stay focused on myself, I become indifferent to you and to your needs. And indifference kills the mission of God. If people are the mission and we are indifferent to people, then we are opposed to the mission of God. So let's listen to what Jesus has to tell us about that. Luke chapter 14, verse 7. So Jesus told a parable to those who were invited. When he noticed how they chose the places of honor, saying to them, when you are invited by someone to a wedding feast, do not sit down in the place of honor, lest someone more distinguished than you be invited by him, and he who invited you both will come and say to you, give your place to this person. And then you will begin with shame to take the lowest place. You see what he's saying? Don't just assume and sit in the place of honor, because it's going to be embarrassing when you have to walk to the back of the room. But when you're invited, go and sit in the lowest place, so that when your friend comes to you, he may say, hey, friend, come up and sit in a better seat. And then you'll be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and then he who humbles himself will be exalted. So just a little party advice from Jesus. He's just giving you a little tip as you go into the holiday season. Don't sit in the front in case they have to move you to the back. That's what Jesus is saying. Jesus knows. What is he doing? He knows we have this obstacle when it comes to engaging other people and loving other people and being on mission with him. He knows we have this obstacle of me. Me wanting the best seats. Say nice things about me, please. I need someone to notice me. And he knows that that is driving our indifference, and that kind of indifference will kill the mission. So he continues with the story, verse 12. And he said also to the man who had invited him, when you give a dinner or a banquet, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or your rich neighbors, lest they also invite you in return, and now you are repaid. But when you give a feast, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the just. What's Jesus saying? Why not invite people to dinner who are hard to love? Well, I can think of a lot of reasons. But I think the main reason is simply we are trapped in our inner circle. You know what I mean? We're kind of stuck in our inner circle of friends that we normally do things with. We have a routine, and we follow our routine. You probably have a path that you take every single day, whether it's to work or school or whatever, and you probably take that same road back on the way home. Every once in a while, I just like to blow past my exit. It just makes me feel free and American. You know what I mean? Nobody's telling me which way to go. So I go down to the next exit, and then I work my way back. Just need to change the scenery. Just need to do something different. But we're sometimes trapped in the same routine, and we become very self-focused, and we think that this is all there is. One of the things Dave mentions in his book is he says the power to overcome the obstacle of self and indifference is in the confidence that this world is not the main world. This is the thing that drives us, is because we know that this world is not the main world. So when we talk about the mission of God, it matters because we know that God is and that He is working and that there's more to it than this. And so it's important that we engage with other people so that other people might know who He is and that He is for them, not against them, and that every living thing on the planet will worship God as He deserves. And so this letter E, let's talk about it for just a minute. Eat with others. So every morning you're going to get up and you're going to begin to pray. God, help me to love people the way that you love people. Help me to see the people that you bring across my path. And as those people come into contact with you, what are you going to do? You're going to listen. You're going to listen to what they have to say. You're going to make eye contact and you're going to hear what they're saying. And you're going to allow God to work in you as you hear where they're coming from. And then you're going to make opportunities to sit down and eat with some of them, to make a way, to be around the table. Zacchaeus, as we know, was looking for something. He was looking for something to fill a void. If he wasn't looking, he wouldn't have climbed a tree to inspect this Jesus that he'd heard of. But he winds up having an encounter with Jesus around his own table. And it changes his life forever. So let's look at Luke 19. Have you got something else you need to do or somewhere you need to be? I don't want to keep you. Let's look at Luke 19 then and unpack the rest of the story. So here's what happens with Zacchaeus. So Luke 19 verse 1, he, Jesus, entered Jericho. By the way, he's entering Jericho because of the cross that's waiting for him. And as he's moving towards Jericho and his community, he's just passing through there because Jerusalem, he needs to go. But as he's going through there, what I'm trying to say is he's busy and he's on a path. Behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus. Now, he was the chief tax collector and he was rich. And he was seeking to see Jesus, to see who he was. But on account of the crowd, he could not see them because he was a wee lad. So he ran ahead of him and he climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was about to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and he said to him, Zacchaeus, you come down, for I'm going to your house today. Today, I'm going to your house today. Maybe we should all sing that song. So Zacchaeus hurried and he came down and received him joyfully. And when they saw it, those are the church people that were there, they grumbled. He has gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. And Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold. And Jesus said to him, Today is the day salvation has come to this house, since he also is of the son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. So here's Zacchaeus. He's short, but he's powerful in his community because he's making money by overcharging people on their taxes. And so the Jews saw him as a traitor who worked for Rome. Not only that, they considered him to be spiritually unclean, which meant he can't even go into the synagogue. So he is really isolated and alone. It looks like he's got it made from a distance because he's got the resources that everyone would want. But the truth is, he is desperately looking for life. And there are people like that all around you. All around you. Who may even look like they have everything together. But what you don't know is they are desperately looking for life. And God has called us to join him on his mission to help people know that God is for them, to share with them that life that can be found only in knowing Jesus. And so maybe you're responding to this right now with, I don't know if I can do that. I really don't know if I can engage people like that. Or have a meal with people like that? And how am I supposed to convince them that God is for them? I don't even know what to say. Can I just encourage you with, that's not up to you. That part's not up to you. It's not up to us to do the saving. It's up to us to do the engaging. To engage. There's no impact without contact. There has to be some contact. So God does the job of saving. We just go and engage. And it's as simple as having a conversation or sharing a cup of coffee. And when the heart engages, the hand extends. John chapter 6:44 tells us, no one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him, and I will raise him up on the last day. Whose job is it to draw people to God? It's the job of God to draw people to God. Ecclesiastes 3:11 tells us that he has put eternity into man's heart. Every heart has a longing for God, and God has placed that in people. St. Augustine said it this way, you have made us for yourself, O God, and our hearts are restless until they find their rest in you. C.S. Lewis put it this way, if I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. There's a deep longing in people that needs to be satisfied, even if they can't articulate what it is. So you might think that this isn't in my notes, so I don't know how it's going to go. You might think that around our world, no one is interested in knowing who God is. You may have just given up on that whole concept, but the truth is, everything points to the fact that more and more and more people are considering themselves to be spiritual in nature. And they're looking and they're very interested in an encounter with God. There's also a really big number that tells us that now, more than ever, people who claim to be Christians do not engage in a local church. So there's a pretty big disconnect there. And I don't have a resolution for you on that. I'm just throwing the numbers out at you. But I am encouraging you that it is up to God to draw people to himself. It's up to us to engage other people. Zacchaeus is being drawn to Jesus by Jesus. So verse 4 in Luke chapter 19, I want to remind you what he did. He ran ahead and he climbed up in the sycamore tree, and he was about to pass that way, and Jesus came to the place, and he looked up to him and he said, Zacchaeus, what does he do? He says, come down, for I must stay at your house today. So there's a line that you can use. You can just go, hey, man, how you doing? It's good to see you. I met you back of the thing. Hey, how about, hey, let's get some lunch at your house. So that's like, you're like, I don't want people in my house. Fine, go to their house. You know what I mean? Or go out to eat. Get a cup of coffee. But Jesus is like, I ain't got time to clean my place. I don't even have a place, so we're going to your house. And so that's what happened. Verse 7, and when they saw it, they all grumbled, and they said, he's gone to eat with a sinner. Here's the thing. Jesus took the time to eat with Zach. That's as deep as it is. He doesn't turn away from him. He just says, let's go to lunch. So you might feel like you can't come to Jesus for whatever reason. Jesus says, I'll come to you. So how does Zacchaeus respond to Jesus engaging with him over lunch? Chapter 19, verse 8. And Zacchaeus stood and he said to the Lord, behold, half of my goods I give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold. You got to get your mind around what he's doing here. What he's saying is he realizes what God has done for him. So there's this whole conversion thing that happens between the conversation of Jesus and Zacchaeus that we don't really have the details of. All I can tell you is when Zacchaeus realized who Jesus was and he realized who he was, he humbled himself before God and he surrendered everything to him. It was the only natural response. So what he's doing here is he's paying people back plus 20%, which was the old law, okay? Plus 20%. But what he does is he goes beyond that. And now what he's doing, he's giving 300% is what he's paying. 300%. Verse 9, and Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, since he also is the son of Abraham." He's just saying, welcome. Welcome to the family. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to be welcomed by God and to be forgiven by God. And it produced a radical response in him toward other people. Can I just, if you've been doing this thing for your whole life and there's never been a radical response in you to want to give everything you have to God, please take a moment and see Jesus for who he is. For the first time, Zacchaeus understood who God was, and it created an incredible expression of generosity in him. Luke 19, verse 10, Jesus sums it up. The Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. That's his mission, and he's doing it around the table. So I'll wrap up with 4 quick things. Which when a preacher says that, you just ignore it. But these really will be fast. Just some takeaways from what Jesus just did. Here's one thing I noticed. He was ready for whoever God brought in his path. He was ready. I mean, he woke up in the morning ready. He was looking. He knew God was going to give him somebody. Why? Because God is working. And God is lining people up. So what if we did that? What if in the morning we woke up and we knew God is working? Someone's going to come across my path today, and I want to be ready. Just be ready. Number 2, Jesus met people where they were. He just met them on their own turf. He was willing to hang out with people who were not the people he normally hung out with, just wherever they happen to be. And he doesn't hesitate to get personally involved with them. Which means we can't be shocked by the sin of other people. You've probably had experiences like this before. I've been in churches before. Some of these experiences are why we're sitting in this room right now. But I've watched people welcome people to leave churches simply because of who they were and how they were. I watched people say, "Did you see that guy at church today? What was he thinking? What was he doing here?" I love the way that Jesus responds to whoever comes across his path, and he doesn't hesitate to say, "What are you doing for lunch?" People that were different. By the way, if you invite me to lunch today, I'm going to feel really weird. Number 3, he engaged with them personally. He ate with sinners. He said, "Let's go get lunch. Let's get to know you. I want you to get to know me." This is not a complicated strategy. Eating is a beautiful thing. I think it's a sacred thing. It's a thing that God has created. He could have made us to just run on water, and we never really needed to eat. He could have done this any way he wanted to, but there's something beautiful about coming around a table with other people. There's something sacred in the way that it happens, and it allows us to engage and get involved in the life of people. And finally, number 4, Jesus lived his life on mission, on the mission of God, knowing that everyone needs to worship his Father, and everyone needs an invitation to him. So let's live on mission where we live, work, and play. Let's begin with prayer. Let's listen well to people. And let's eat. Let's eat. Maybe you take your lunch to work every day and you sit in your car. What would happen if you sat at a table and just waited to see who came by? What if you just said, okay, I'm not going to eat lunch alone anymore? Just see who God puts in your path. And we ask the question, why has God blessed me? And then we realize the blessing of God on me was never meant to end with me. It was meant to flow through me. Hey, I really like you, by the way. I'm happy to be walking in this with you. I am a situational extrovert. What that means is, in this situation, I'm extroverted. Off the stage, not so much. I am notorious for sitting in a restaurant by myself for a couple of hours and being so happy. Even in college, I'd go in a crowded dining room and I would pick a table where no one was. And people would come over to me, oh, don't eat by yourself. I'm going, shut up. Don't invite me. I don't want to talk to you. So I get it. I get it. But this is not the only world. There is another world. And everyone needs an invitation to Jesus. It is no accident that Jesus uses the symbol of the table to remind us of who he is. And the concept really is not just when you come to church and you eat the tiny meal together. The concept is whenever you and your small group get around a table, you do it with Jesus at the center. Jesus said, when you get around the table and you break the bread and you lift the cup, remember me. And so we're going to do that in a really micro way, but I just want you to imagine being with family this morning around a table. And as we share this symbolic meal, let's have our hearts filled with gratitude that Jesus took the time to engage with us so that we might know his Father and worship him. So God, as we take the bread and the cup, we ask that you would fill us with your presence. And we thank you for your generosity to us. Give us courage to engage with others on mission with you. And we give you thanks. In Jesus' name, amen.